the sun is the closest star to Earth. But what would happen if it were to suddenly disappear? Would we burn up in space or freeze instantly? What would happen to the Earth without the sun? If this were to happen, there are so many things that we'd have to consider. Today, we read gone. Now, find out exactly what would happen to our planet and ourselves if the sun were to just randomly vanish into thin air. When the sun does eventually run out of hydrogen fuel and collapse in on itself, we will certainly die. But until then, the sun will continue to shine brightly in the sky. So what if the sun disappeared before it ran out of fuel? How long would we survive? How long do we have left to live before the sun dies? These are questions that scientists have been trying to answer for years, and while they may not have all the answers, they do know that if the sun were to suddenly disappear, we'd only have 14 minutes to save ourselves. That doesn't sound like a lot of time, but it's actually enough time for us to take some drastic measures and save our lives. We've seen it in movies before. A sudden asteroid headed straight for Earth, and scientists desperately working against the clock to try and come up with a way to stop it. What we need in this scenario is a massive spaceship capable of taking people away from the pot, Earth, and keeping them alive for months or even years, while we search for a new solar system to inhabit. This might sound far-fetched, but it's actually not impossible at all. With the right technology and planning, we could make this happen. But let's be real here. Even if we did manage to build such a ship in time, where would we even go? The nearest star system to ours is Alpha Centauri, which is more than 4 light years away. That means that even if we were to travel at the speed of light, it would still take us over 4 years to get there. And let's not forget that we can't travel at the speed of light. So realistically, it would take us a lot longer than that. But even if we could somehow make the journey in a relatively short amount of time, would we even survive the trip? There's no guarantee of that either. Space is a very hostile environment, and it would be very difficult to keep people alive for that long without the sun's life-giving rays. If the sun did suddenly disappear, we would likely be doomed. But what if it didn't disappear completely? What if instead it just went really far away? How long could we survive if the sun were to move just a little further away? Scientists have actually studied this scenario, and the results are pretty interesting. According to their calculations, if the sun were to move just 7% further away from Earth, we could survive for at least another 1 million years. That doesn't sound like a lot of time, but it's actually enough time for us to evolve and become something else entirely. Over time, we'd probably grow fur or feathers and become like animals or birds. Eventually, the Earth would become uninhabitable, and we'd have to leave and search for a new planet to call home. Of course, this is all just speculation, and it's impossible to say for sure what would happen if the sun were to suddenly move further away. But it's still fun to think about. What would we evolve into if given enough time? Would we become a species of super intelligent apes? Or maybe we'd become like the Borg from Star Trek, a hive mind of interconnected beings. It's hard to say, but one thing's for certain, we wouldn't be human anymore. Let's say the sun did move away, but not too far. Maybe it would move back into its original position after a few days or weeks. In this scenario, we'd probably be okay, but we'd have to deal with some serious side effects. First of all, there'd be no sunlight for a few days, which would cause chaos all over the planet. Plants would die, and the food chain would collapse. Animals would go extinct, and humans would likely follow suit within a few weeks. But let's be honest, this scenario is pretty unlikely to happen. The sun is not going anywhere anytime soon. It's estimated that the sun will continue to shine brightly in the sky for another 5 billion years. So we've got plenty of time to enjoy its warmth and light. But what if the sun did get a little bit dimmer? How would that affect us? The sun is currently in its main sequence stage of life, which is when it converts hydrogen to helium in its core and releases energy. It's estimated that the sun will remain in this stage for another 5 billion years. After that, it will enter the red giant phase of its life, which is when it will expand and engulf the inner planets, including Earth. But what if the sun were to start dimming before then? How would that affect us? Scientists predict that if the sun were too dim by only 1%, it'd likely face a mass extinction event similar to the one that wiped out the dinosaurs. A decrease in sunlight would lead to a decrease in temperatures, which would cause chaos for the entire planet. Plants would die, and the food chain would collapse. Animals would go extinct, and humans would likely follow suit within a few years. While this scenario is also unlikely to happen anytime soon, it is a possibility that we should keep in mind. The sun is a variable star, which means that its brightness can change over time. Although these variations are usually very small, they can sometimes be significant. So, what if the sun did suddenly become a lot dimmer? How long would we survive? If the sun were too dim by 25%, we'd likely only survive a few months. A decrease in sunlight would lead to a decrease in temperatures, which would cause chaos for the entire planet. Plants would die, and the food chain would collapse. Animals would go extinct, and humans would likely follow suit within a few months. While this scenario is still unlikely to happen anytime soon, it's not impossible. The sun is a natural variable star, and its brightness can change due to a number of factors, including sunspots and solar flares. What about if the sun were to just randomly turn off for a few seconds? Our power grids would go down immediately, plunging the entire planet into darkness. Cell phones and other electronic devices would die. Cars would swerve out of control, and planes would fall from the sky. For a few seconds, it would feel like the end of the world. But then, reality would set in, and we'd realize that the sun would likely turn back on again. Still, it would be a terrifying experience that would likely lead to widespread panic and chaos. While the sun is unlikely to disappear, move further away, or suddenly dim, it's still fun to speculate about what would happen if it did. It gives us a chance to appreciate the amazing star that we have, and the fact that we are so lucky to have it as our source of light and heat. But it also gives us a glimpse into what might happen if our sun were to die. When that happens, we will have to find a new star to worship. But until then, let us enjoy the sun while we can. Did you enjoy this video? Then check out this video next.